Welcome to We Hear Her. I am Erin Trenbeth Murray.
And I am Jennifer Bean.
We're here today with another amazing woman who's sharing her story and insights to lessons learned.
All right, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bev Uipi, and I am here today with Gina Alfred, who is with Salt Lake Community College. Gina, you've got titles, and I'm sure more titles that I can't even talk about. But before we turn the time over, today we're going to talk about what it's like to be a woman of color here in Utah as we serve in our communities, and other feedback that we'd like to hear from Gina.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Gina, and what you do at Salt Lake Community College.
Okay, well, I am not a native of Utah. I am born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. So I like to say I've been visiting Utah for the past 21 years. But at Salt Lake Community College, I've been there since about 2012. I'm a coordinator of student affairs, and I am the president of Staff Association. So I represent all of the staff at the college. I was also licensed and ordained as a pastor under Corey J. Hodges over at the Point Church back in 2010. So,
wow, what an exciting! That's a kind of a wide range of at least coming into Utah. Mm-hmm. What brought you to Utah to visit 21 years ago?
So when I actually graduated high school, I had cousins out in Job Corps, and they were like, oh, come out to Job Corps, because I never really thought about college being an option, especially coming from St. Louis. It was just a matter of trying to survive. And so I came out to Job Corps, ended up finishing a trade, meeting my daughter's father, and then staying here, left. The Lord brought me back. And I've been here, left again. He brought me back. So I said, okay, there must be purpose here in Utah.
Right.
And when I started at Salt Lake Community College, I actually started as a full-time student. And I was working on an associate's for humanities. And then I was hired on full-time. Then I went to Liberty University and received my bachelor's in theology to accompany that pastoralship. Mm-hmm. And that's where my passion was, not realizing that it was people, for the passion, but it was religion, psychology, philosophy, along those lines, but always people were the center. And talking about servant leadership, it was one of those things where any injustice, it doesn't matter who it's against, whether it's a man, woman, child, black, white, Polynesian, Asian, etc. Injustices ruffle my feathers like no other. And I just, here in Utah, would see documentaries on Netflix that would just incite a passion in me. And I was just like pointing my finger at God, do something about this. All the while, I kept feeling him saying, you do something, you do something. And so I just started being active and involved and just speaking up and speaking out on behalf of marginalized, underrepresented individuals.
And so, we're, as a fellow Christian, what have you felt your calling is? I mean, you're obviously a woman of color here in Utah. We are women of color here in Utah. As you know, coming from St. Louis, the diversity, I guess, ratio is not as much as there is back in St. Louis. Tell me maybe some of the challenges and the purpose that you're finding yourself into in the community, or whether it's at the college or with your pastoralship.
It's been tough. Coming from St. Louis to Salt Lake, there was the culture shock. And when I did come back in 2001, not really seeing a lot of people of color, and just having not so pleasant experiences with my daughter. She was 4 at the time, in preschool or daycare, when I would have to work as a single mom, taking her to daycares that were maybe 24 hours, and then going to pick her up and hearing these horrific stories about how she was treated, simply because of the color of her skin. And so and you can't beat up kids on the playground, right? So it's like, oh, how do we change this? How do we help people understand that even though my skin or my melanin is darker, I'm still a human being. I still bleed red like you when cut. And so just having not necessarily even a passion, but a compassion, understanding that we are all human beings. And so seeing my daughter go through that, I had to make a tough decision of, sending her to the Virgin Islands, right, where everyone looked like her. And although you might think that's a great thing, it almost created a bubble, so to speak, where because everyone on island looked like her when she came to the States, it was almost as if she was oblivious to racism, thinking, Mom, you're overreacting. And it's like, no, and after being in Utah for some time, she came back after she graduated high school to go to college for free at Salt Lake Community College because I worked there, sure enough. And so then she started to experience microaggressions and things of that nature. And so it was one of those things where as a mom, you're always in protector mode, but at the same time, you think about your child. Mm-hmm. I want her to learn to navigate certain things on her own. And so when I was reached out to about Women Who Succeed, and they say, well, we want to mentor young women, I intentionally said I would love to be a mentor, but a mentor for young women of color, because representation matters. I had to go through the instances of having a daughter who at the time was not okay with the texture and coarseness of her hair, wanting her hair to look a certain way, and having to help her understand that you are created in the image and likeness of God. When people look at you, they see God, and He created you the way He did, and so you have to embrace that, because if you don't, who will? It was tough. It was challenging. And years later, we're still, dealing with issues like that here in the state. However, I am hopeful, which is why I want to, again, be out, talk vocally. I think if people understand that, again, hey, we're human beings. Hey, I like eating McDonald's just like you like eating McDonald's. I like shopping at Costco like you like. Like, there's nothing that differentiates us as human beings other than our experiences culturally. Mm-hmm. And once we can understand that and humanize each other, I think we can go a long way, right? We can change some things. And so I was excited to be part of Women Who Succeed because I do believe, again, representation matters, especially for young women of color here in Utah. When you, as a Black woman, having natural curly hair, it's like I can't go to Great Clips and get the hairstyle I want because even though you may have women at Great Clips who went to cosmetology school, it's not going to be the same experience, right? I need someone that understands what it's like to be Black and knows how to, do Black hair, things of that nature. And so being out and vocal, getting people used to hearing conversations and not being afraid to have those conversations, and creating what we've coined some of the faculty at Salt Lake Community College as a base space, a brave, authentic, safe space where you can have these vulnerable, authentic conversations. And even if someone says something that may seem offensive, their landing is safe, right? Typically, when you fall, you may have an abrasion or something that may hurt. But we want to create a soft space so that when you fall, you're not afraid to get up and fall again if necessary, in order for you to learn what needs to be learned when you're interacting with someone who doesn't look like you, talk like you, or maybe from where you're from.
And so I love that you call it the base space. And let's talk about maybe moving into the Women Who Succeed space. I know that we have many young women, many. I have 2 of minority descent, ethnic diversity, and but I have 4. Now, I know the conversations, right, for me are going to be as neutral as possible,
Mm-hmm.
but there might be some things that resonate more with two and maybe not with the others. How would you encourage someone who is taking this on, right? Taking this on as a woman of color, or maybe not a woman of color, who have young minds of color in their mentee wheelhouse. How would you encourage what BASE looks like in these conversations? Because we're not at Salt Lake Community,
Right.
but they're obviously time, right? We don't have as much time maybe as we would normally have with the mentors.
Right.
So how would you encourage women to help other women understand what space for women of color looks like for young minds?
I think that's a great question. And simply put, let people be who they are, right? I think often we hear terms like professionalism, and everyone has an idea of what it means to be professional, right? But when we think about it, professionalism is a white colonial word. And so when you look at professionalism, maybe from a Black perspective, I think about my ancestors who were kings and queens, in their villages, and they didn't wear suits, right? And so, but they were still professional because they were running, the country, so to speak. So I think when we let people be who they are and not try to put them in a box, not trying to say, I get this all the time, you've been here this long and you still have an accent. And I'm like, I don't have an accent, And it's like, yes, you do. You talk like you're from the South. And I'm like, well, me personally, I will never probably ever sound like I'm from Utah because I'm not, right? So embrace me for who I am, from where I come from. And I think one of the best things we can do, especially when we're dealing with young, impressionable minds, let them develop into who they are meant to be on their own, right? We can make a blueprint, but that blueprint should probably consist of multiple ways to get to an end destination. And what I mean by that is, for me, I never thought college was an option, right? I grew up in St. Louis, where in the early 80s, towards the latter part of 80s, I'm ducking and dodging bullets, trying to survive. Bloods came from California to infiltrate the neighborhood to recruit. So that's the environment I grew up in. College was never a thought for me because I'm too busy trying to learn how to survive in my neighborhood. I didn't have someone saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. I, of course, had a mom in the home. She was a single mom raising 3 kids. So her thing was, hey, when I'm not here, you're in the house, doors locked, don't answer the door, no one comes in, things of that nature. It wasn't until I moved here to Utah that, and years after I had moved here, I began to think about college, right? And so I understand that college is not for everybody, and it's not for everyone at an appointed time, right? Meaning a lot of people think you come right out of high school, you go right into college. I'm not saying don't get an education. By any means, I'm not saying don't go to school to get an education. Get an education. But you have to do it when it's right for you. I went to college working on an associate's in my 30s, and I'm 44 now, right? But I had to be ready for that, right? Because it's also a state of mind. Was I going to be disciplined to do the work? And so I think when we're mentoring young children or young women, or even if they don't look like us, if they're from a different culture, a different background, embrace them where they are. Let them learn and stumble and fall on their own. Sometimes we try to prevent our children or those that we're mentoring from falling, but we also do damage that way. Let them fall. Let them scrape that knee, because that, I think, builds resilience, but then it helps them to learn things. As the saying goes, experience is the best teacher. Some people learn by experience. Some people you can say, hey, right, the hard way. You can say, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And you may have 3 children that you tell that to. One probably will not touch the stove because, hey, hearing it is enough. But the others, they're going to touch. Even though they've seen someone just touch the stove and get burned, they still want to experience that. And so I think just letting people be who they are and embrace them where they are, that is so important, because you may be here, but someone may be here. It's not to say that this creates a hierarchy. It just says that, hey, they need a little more time to develop in whatever it is that they're trying to develop in. So be patient with them. Again, humanize the experience. Let them be who they are, where they are, and embrace them. And you'll be surprised at what you can cultivate in that individual if you just allow them to be who they are.
I love that you said that. I wanted to maybe talk about, because people may be watching this, and, you know, if you're a mentee in the Women Who Succeed program, there may be younger siblings. There may be others that they influence in this. What would be something that we can share with our fellow mentors, when knowing it might not be just that one life that we affect, that it might be an entire family, you know, because they might be looking up to her, right? But we only have her attention at the moment. How can we help encourage in these spaces of our Women Who Succeed meetings, our networking, to then kind of pay it forward, or to cause that ripple effect of change and inspiration?
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that we unintentionally do when we are mentoring or when we're in leadership roles, we make it about us, right? It's what do I have to do to be a good leader, to be a good mentor, et cetera, et cetera. So then it all becomes about what we should or should not do. I like for us to shift that narrative and shift that thinking. Let's make it about those that we are leading, that have leadership and mentoring. That's a privilege, right? If you're in a leadership position and you're taking a walk, but there's no one behind you following, you're not leading anyone, you're just taking a walk. And so I think when dealing with mentees, put them on the pedestal, for lack of a better term, not idolize them, but make it about them. Because like you said, you're developing a mind, helping to, groom a young mind that in turn has siblings or cousins or friends looking up to them. So you are, in essence, developing the next, hopefully, servant leader that will have that mentality that mentoring and leadership is not about me, but the people I have the privilege of serving and impacting. So I think if we keep mentees and those that we have the privilege of leading as leaders in the forefront, and we always make it about them. What are their needs? What are their goals? Because when you help them reach their peak, then you're going to reach your peak as well. Because you're creating a ripple effect or a chain effect. So just put that mentee first. Ask them, what are your needs? What is it that you're lacking? How can I help you be a better you? Not a mini me, not my protege, but a better you. And I think that's one of the best things we can do to help develop a young mind is, again, give them the tools that they need, not that we think they need, but the tools that they actually need to succeed.
Gina, do you have any final last thoughts that you'd like to leave us with before we end this wonderful, wonderful interview?
I don't, other than be who you are, embrace who you are, love who you are and where you are, and be the leader that you were created to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to hear her. Join our efforts and learn more at womenwhosucceed.org. A big thank you to our sponsor, the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation.